All right, we're gonna get started here. We're still waiting on a couple of more attendees to join, but just to get started into things, hello and thank you all for joining today's webinar, Fortify the Factory, applying proven security architecture to OT environments. Today we're just gonna go over some brief introductions, a little CTC overview, IT and OT by design, some common IT and OT security. Um, Some common IT and OT security challenges, some technical foundations of OT security, the Purdue model, designing and implementing secure OT networks, one platform for IT and OT security. Then we'll open it up at the end to a Q&A and open discussion session. All right, so just to introduce myself, my name is Trent Sexton. I am a solutions architect here at CTC. I've been working here for about 4 years now. Started as a network engineer, moved into an SA role here more recently. Prior to that, I did 4 years in the Air Force as a cyber transport technician, which is very similar to a network administrator. But in my time here at CTC, I've spent the last 4 years pretty much dedicating my life to Fortinet and its solutions and how we can best provide support to our clients through a Fortinet hardware and professional services standpoint. Also on the call, we have Stephen Romero from Fortinet. Super happy to have him on the call. Steve, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Trent. Happy to be here. Appreciate everyone joining this morning. My name is Stephen Romero, as Trent introduced me. I live in the Houston area. I've lived in Houston area all my life, which naturally lends to working in the oil and gas industry for almost 30 years. 25 actually before joining Fortinet. I've been with Fortinet for roughly 3 years. And have worked as an OT solutions engineer in that capacity, serving major oil and gas accounts, and now also helping serve partners like CTC and others. My background's pretty extensive in the engineering arena, both on a project scale and operational engineering, deploying security and networks, and also deploying control systems environments in downstream and upstream oil and gas fields. So again, thank you all for being here, and happy to support you guys.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Steve, for introducing yourself. Super happy to have you on the call today. So back to it, a little bit about CTC Technologies. We've been in the industry for a little over 20 years now, servicing clients mainly in the manufacturing space and also around the greater Southeast Michigan, Northern Ohio, Indiana area. We have been supporting projects globally, such as firewall rollouts, LAN refreshes, MDF refreshes. We have a wide network of partners that we work with in strategic regions to be able to support those clients all across the globe. So here at CTC, we are a kind of a one-stop shop when it comes to your IT and OT needs. We start everywhere from original design work, so network and network security and wireless architecture design, all the way through the procurement phase, implementation, and ultimately ending up into a post-installation support, rolling into our managed services offering. All right, so why partner with CTC? Why use us for both your IT and OT networking needs? One common challenge we see in the manufacturing space and in a lot of environments as that is this disconnect between your IT network and OT, right? It's oftentimes handled by two separate organizations or two separate teams, right, within the same organization. You have one that's dedicated solely to IT management and support, another one to OT management and support. So having one partner to support both of those needs helps bridge that gap and apply the same company and industry standards to both solutions, right? To both networks and architecture. Some common OT challenges that we see in the workspace, specifically manufacturing, is improper cable management, a lot of temporary fixes that aren't ever temporary. We see cables running free air over top of machines that are getting covered in dust and soot, machine oil, things like that that can severely degrade, the layer one physical cabling. Um, Also, when it comes to, IDFs, these manufacturing cabinets, and also, the PLC cabinets, we see that they're oftentimes just left unlocked and open for anyone to be able to access. So any user that's on the floor can walk right in and see like, okay, see these DIN rails and mess with them if they so chose to, right? Not saying that they would, but there is that possibility, right? From a networking standpoint, specifically towards the layer two and layer three, we see that a lot of our clients have a very flat architecture, right? So they have one VLAN or two, right, that control all of their manufacturing processes, and there's not a clear separation between those network segments where one process starts, one ends, and moving on from there. So what we can do to help is to identify those problems, why they are a problem, and design a long-lasting solution so that we're not necessarily redesigning what was built 50, 60, 70 years ago and causing a bunch of downtime. But how do we take your current environment and apply 2026 security principles and networking standards for a highly available, robust, and ultimately secure network? And traditionally, right, when uh, OT environments were being deployed back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, right, they were air-gapped networks, right? It was very old standards using Modbus RTU, and these processes and networks didn't need to communicate with your corporate IT network or to any cloud compute, right? They stayed on premise in their own air-gapped secure environment. So there was no need to apply IT, security standards to these systems. But now, as we get into the 21st century, right, we're in 2026, we need to enable that connectivity from our OT environments to our corporate IT platforms because we might have, ERP servers up in the cloud. We'll have our engineering team or admin team over in the EU or Asia, Latin America, wherever it may be. We need to have access to these networks for centralized reporting and also management all across the globe. The problems with that is a lot of these systems are still running off of legacy operating systems and hardware that aren't supported anymore, right? We still see some servers that are running Windows NT. We see desktops running Windows 7, Windows Server 2003, 2008. These operating systems and systems, they don't they're not up to standard anymore. They're past end of support. There's no more patches for them, and it causes a huge risk and vulnerability to not only just your OT environment, but also your IT environment. So, how do we bridge that gap? How do we apply the latest network security standards to these legacy degraded systems? So I started to allude to the convergence risk, right? Connecting your OT environment to your IT to centralized reporting, diagnostics, and to move administration off-site. The problem that was, or I guess the catalyst for that change was um, there's no longer the need to have resources at each plant to there's no longer a need to have resources at each plant to administer and service these systems. It wasn't cost effective, and we could use these resources in a better use, right? So if we move that off-site, we can move the administration off-site and cut down cost and workload. So just outside of letting insecure end of support Windows systems, we're also bringing, PLC devices, HMIs, RTUs, things like that, that can't secure themselves, right? They might only operate in clear text, right? If you're running off of like a Modbus RTU or some other legacy type of communication protocol. And these PLCs, they're, considered dumb devices. You can't load an antivirus software on them. They don't have enough compute to be able to secure themselves. So onto the OT security fundamentals. OT devices can't secure themselves. Right? They were designed in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and they were meant to turn on and off gates, open and close switches, communicate with relays and sensors, meters. They weren't designed to be secure because there was no real threat yet, except for physical access. There was no networking threats. So a lot of these devices and systems are considered dumb, right? Because they write function codes, they read coils, they can write commands to different sensors or gates, but they can't hold any type of software to protect themselves. So the OT communication protocols, there are many communication protocols, but the most common that we see in an environment are Modbus RTU, Modbus TCP, and Ethernet IP. Those are the three most common, and of course they all have their own flavor of communicating. So for example, Modbus, whether it's RTU or TCP, writes function codes in a hexadecimal format, and in the legacy way before TLS was introduced in 2018, they were sent over clear text. So when we write these functions and we're pushing them down to our meters, to our sensors, our gates, we are exposing that risk of someone be able to sniff that traffic, pull exactly our data, what we're reading, and potentially manipulate it. All right, and then jumping into the Purdue model. The Purdue model is the basic framework for all IT and OT converged networks. This is not necessarily you have to follow it exactly to a T, but it is a good framework foundation for building out and securing your environment. So starting out at level 5, our enterprise corporate IT network. This consists of our cloud computing, directory services, ERP systems, and any other sort of custom corporate application that might live in the cloud or a private cloud data center. Moving on to our level 4. This is the core of our network. This is our web servers, email servers, DNS, DHCP, NTP. These are the basic foundations that make a network function, right? These are commonly held in like a headquarters environment, in a private data center, and things like that. Moving on to level 3.5, we have the demilitarized zone, also known as DMZ. And this is where we can get pretty flexible, right? We don't necessarily need to have only one DMZ, right? One segregated network for external access or specific application access. We can have multiple, we can have 1, 2, 5, 10, 100 DMZs that all serve a specific purpose, right? So we might have a DMZ specifically for our OT environment, right? That includes our patch servers, a historian, mirror, or even a jump box to be able to access those systems remotely and efficiently. Then moving on to level 3, this is our manufacturing operations level. This is really where the boundary between IT and OT begins. So at level 3, this is where we have our, our MDFs, our IDFs, our user workstations out on the floors, might be where plant managers' computer is at, but more geared towards the OT space. This is where our controllers and operators are going to be sitting, connecting onto their workstations to connect to SCADA systems and historians, the journals, things like that, to be able to read coils and write functions down to our PLCs and RTUs. All right, moving on to level 2. This is our supervisory control level. This is where we start to see more risk in the environment, right? As opposed to level 3, where the user workstations are probably running Windows 11 and they have some type of AV software on them. In level 2, this is where our SCADA servers and HMIs are being held that might be running older OS versions to accommodate a legacy, degraded application that is critical, right? It's business critical. It's running our operations, moving product, and we have to accept that risk. But you can see this is where we separate it, right? In level 3, it was indicated as blue. In level 2, this is indicated as red to show that clear separation and that risk boundary. And moving on to level 1, we have our basic controls. This is where our PLCs interface to our SCADA systems and to our HMIs, and then also connect down to our sensors and meters. This is also where our RTUs are, DSC controllers, and other managing systems that directly interface with our level 0 devices. So this is where we have the most risk. This is where, as I alluded to before, we are holding our devices that can't protect themselves. They don't have the compute or resources to be able to load an antivirus software on them. We might still be running old communications protocols that are passing traffic over in clear text. There's no good way to protect this area except to segregate it and put it in its own level and isolate it. And we'll get into that a little further. Moving on to level 0, this is our physical process level. This is where our sensors and actuators, gates, and relays all reside and live. At this level, this is literally just a device that is opening and shutting a gate for products being dumped into a batch. This is where a PLC might be telling a machine to cut a specific part and when to do it, how to do it. And so level 0, there is still risk at this level, but since there is no operating system, there's no interface to them. They're just devices out there reading data or performing actions. There is minimal risk except for physical access and the interface to our level 1 and level 2 devices. To review our Purdue model one last time, you can see how all of these levels and services interconnect with one another, how a level 1 device and the risk and vulnerabilities that it has can affect a level 5 corporate cloud application, right? If a bad actor were able to exploit one of these PLCs, RTUs, or DSC controllers, they have the ability to escalate privileges, right, up through level 2, 3, 3.5 until they get the desired action or the desired access that they're looking for. So that's why securing our network end to end from level 5 all the way down to level 0 is crucial to ensure a highly available and secure network. All right, and so how do we apply the Purdue model? So applying the Purdue model always starts with a discovery or design, right? So we will first interface with you, your team, and your users to figure out what the problems are. What are you experiencing today that might be slowing production or ultimately stopping production? And we aim to solve those problems first, right? Now that we have solved all the problems, we can dedicate more time, effort, and resources to designing that bulletproof, highly available, secure network. So this all starts with, wireless and your network. So when it comes to our network surveys, we perform two of them. One is an on-site survey. We'll actually come out on site. We'll walk around your plant, figure out what is going on, talk to your users, talk with the plant staff to identify any issues, and just with a fresh set of eyes, see how the plant is operating from an IT/OT space. Another is through a remote monitoring solution where we deploy a collector into your environment. We pull certain data from SNMP or CLI, HTTPS, whatever it may be, and we map out what your network is today, right? From a logical and physical standpoint, we can figure out what services that they're running, what protocols are using, open ports, things like that. From a wireless perspective, this is crucial and honestly key for the latest generation of industrial control automations that are using wireless to connect to the network. For instance, we might have a robot that moves up and down a line, or might bring material from one part of the plant to another. Right? It's kind of hard to attach that with an Ethernet cable if it's constantly moving. So how do we solve that? And that's by putting transmitters and receivers on these robots to be able to accept a wireless signal. So we always approach these types of scenarios with a design first, right? We need to figure out what type of robots are you running, what sort of automations or processes require wireless, what are their wireless capabilities, and how dense do we need to make the environment. So that's where we typically come in with an AP on a stick survey to map out the actual 100%. This is what wireless coverage looks like, and this is how we can maintain a highly available and secure wireless infrastructure for those ruggedized and OT spaces that are using wireless for their automations and robots, things like that. As we move through the design phase, we figure out the solution that works best for you. We move into procurement. So we work with you and distribution to get the absolute best discounting for you, the best prices to procure. We'll work with you to figure out exactly what devices you need and where they need to be placed. And then we'll move on to the implementation phase. And we have an incredible team that can support anything from low voltage cabling to fiber optics to engineering to help design, build and configure, and ultimately deploy your new network or solution. Right? And once we are done with the implementation phase, we do project handover. We can easily roll into continued services through our managed service program. Now, as part of the project handover, we'll also help will also help you identify where these devices and solutions are being mapped into your Purdue level, right? So you're not just flying blind. You know that you have these specific switches and FortiGates in this specific level. You know that you're running FortiClient or FortiEndpoint, right, on your level 2 devices, and where those reside, the vulnerabilities that are associated with them. And this is where Fortinet really shines. So the Fortinet ruggedized hardware series is purpose built for these extremely harsh, dusty, dirty, very hot or very cold environments where traditional IT hardware would die within a year or two. These devices are built to withstand extreme temperatures and the worst of the worst environments. Now, these devices, they operate on DC input only, right, between 12 and 58 volts, depending on what device we're deploying, and they are extremely resilient. They can be mounted directly onto DIN rails in your existing PLC cabinets, so that it has easy access to connect to the rest of your infrastructure, such as your HMIs and PLCs, different Ethernet IP modules, things like that, so they can very cleanly and efficiently connect to your network. Moving on from just the FortiGates, other ruggedized devices that are extremely helpful and useful are the FortiSwitches, which can extend the FortiGates interfaces to other parts of the plant. So for instance, if you have the same process or similar process that is running in separate PLC cabinets, we can deploy FortiGate at the head end, or what would be considered the boundary of that process segment, and connect to FortiSwitches into these other cabinets and connect them up to the gate for a FortiLink, ultimately extending the FortiGate's interfaces for extremely easy management and use. For those areas that might be hard to reach or where wireless is absolutely required, we have ruggedized FortiAP models that can be deployed in very similar environments. They're built to withstand very high operating temperatures and dusty, dirty, oil-filled air, right? They're designed to withstand the most harsh and extreme environments. Now, where do we place these devices? And it ultimately depends on our discovery and design and talking with you and team for how you want your OT environment to be deployed, how you want to manage it, and how you want it to function. So as I started to talk about previously, I typically like to approach these deployments as segmenting processes. Right, we might have a process that is only for cutting cutting molds out of an aluminum roll, right? But we might have 10 of those running all at the same time. So how do we connect all of those and save and secure them? They might be running in 2, 3, 4, 5 different PLC cabinets, but we don't necessarily need every single cabinet to be segmented, right? We just need for them to be able to communicate with each other, and they might all be sharing the same PLC or group of PLCs. So when we're deploying the ideal devices and network for that process, we might install, one FortiGate or maybe a pair of HA FortiGates for high availability and deploy FortiSwitches downstream to our other PLC cabinets and our machine control cabinets to extend that interface down to those specific processes and machines. And from there, we have one segmented process. And I know I started talking about segmentation, but now that we have our processes and our network segmented into their use cases and what needs to talk to each other and common use cases, now how do we take that further? Because it's not just good enough that we have a trusted zone. There's no such thing as a trusted zone anymore. It's 2026. We need to approach security, network security, from a as close to zero trust approach as possible. So this is when we deploy micro segmentation. That we're basically saying that we trust nothing on this network segment to communicate directly with one another. So we start by blocking intra-VLAN traffic, which ultimately kills all east to west communication. And then we enable proxy ARP right into the FortiGate to force the layer 3 up to the firewall. From there, we're able to control what is able to communicate with one another through firewall policies and zero trust policies, depending on the device's capabilities. So by moving the layer 3 up and blocking all east to west communication, we have started micro segmenting, and we are only allowing the devices to communicate with one another that we need them to. And this is where the OT license for the FortiGates really comes into play. From there, we can build out custom applications and OT signatures that that can detect vulnerabilities of these devices and protect them, but also we can apply specific rules to these policies, whether it be unidirectional, bidirectional, whatever it is. So for example, if we have a PLC that only needs to send a certain function code to one of its variable frequency drives, what we can do is set the function code and that specific value on the gate, apply it to the firewall policy, and so we're not just relying on the PLC to be configured correctly and only allow a certain range. Now we can force that onto the firewall as well from a networking standpoint, so it never even hits the PLC, further decreasing the risk of human error and also bad actors being able to override and burn up a variable frequency drive and ultimately wreaking havoc onto an OT environment. And you say, great, okay, we have things segmented, micro-segmented, but still that doesn't necessarily solve protecting and securing these legacy systems. And this is where FortiGate applies virtual patching. So the FortiGate has over 3,000, actually, I believe it's 3,500 virtual patching signatures now at this point, specifically geared towards the OT environment. So when we enable device detection on our network segments or our interfaces, what we can do is, based off of MAC address and the traffic that is being passed across the interface, we can tell what that device is and the vulnerabilities that are associated with it. So now we know that we have a Windows 2003 server that has 60 critical vulnerabilities on it on our network, but we have no way of securing it, right? No AV software is going to run on it, no EDR software. So by pulling these virtual patching signatures from FortiGuard onto the gate, we can apply those patches and rules and signatures directly onto the policy. So when traffic is matched either inbound or outbound that is matching a known exploit signature for that vulnerability, right, we can take actions against that traffic. We can either block it, we can monitor it, or perform some other type of cool automations through the security fabric to track that down, figure out where it might have originated, and ultimately quarantine and mitigate that risk and exploit. All right, so why Fortinet? I feel like I've been talking a lot about Fortinet and why they're great. I think it's safe to assume, you know, where I stand about Fortinet, their technologies and capabilities, specifically towards the OT environment, but also their IT environments as well. One of the biggest selling points I'll talk about before I hand it over to Stephen is the single pane of glass approach that Fortinet has towards all of their technologies. And again, I hate using that verbiage. I hate using single pane of glass, but Fortinet, I will say, does the absolute best job out of any vendor I have worked with of providing that single pane of glass for your management, your troubleshooting, and diagnostics through through FortiManager, through FortiEdge Cloud, FortiAnalyzer to pull logs and diagnose and troubleshoot, look for threats. We're able to manage, you know, hundreds, if not thousands, of FortiGate switches and APs, all from one interface. So I'm gonna leave it at that, and I'm gonna hand it over to Stephen now to talk a little bit why he believes Fortinet is the best when it comes to the IT and the OT space.
Yeah, thank you, Trent, very much for that awesome presentation, rundown of what CTC does, and also, you know, quite a bit of detail on how we operate and how we work to secure OT environments. So with that, I'll dive into a little bit of how we do that, although you've covered it very extensively. And I'll just spend a few moments here at the end of this webinar to talk about the Fortinet OT security platform, and how you can take advantage of that and learn more about Fortinet before we get to our Q&A session. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but we can go to the next slide, just kind of give us an overview of our leadership in the space. So these are two bullet points I wanted to highlight. One, we've consistently ranked as leaders amongst analyst views and our customer base, who've ranked us very highly in the OT security space. Here's one report from the Westlands Advisory on IT OT security platform navigator report that they release year after year. The latest was 2025. They'll release another one in 2026, and they've released subsequent ones where we've consistently scored a leadership role in the top right quadrant of their report. So basically, this just speaks to the industry that we are leaders in the space. We've been analyzed by third parties, and not ranking ourselves, but amongst our industry peers, we've performed very, very highly in OT security. Also, our growth over the last few years has expanded quite greatly, and we are currently measured at about two times annual growth when you measure us against our industry peers, other competitors and whatnot, who also offer OT security solutions. So we're growing very rapidly in that space and also in the traditional IT security space. But these two slides are pertinent to OT. Let's move to the next slide. All right, so the platform covers a gambit of different aspects of enterprise security, including IT and OT. As Trent emphasized in his presentation, the enterprise has to be viewed as, one big security domain, obviously with different security levels, but we treat the enterprise as one large security domain that needs to be protected all the way from the cloud to the lowest levels of the OT network. And we have a very extensive set of solutions. Kyle showed you a few of them, but we have over 50 solutions in our portfolio that span the IT security and OT security domains. And we do that using three primary pillars of security, focusing on network segmentation, cloud security, and security operations. Um, One of the things that Trent wrapped up with at the end was our ability to manage everything centrally and gain unified visibility across the Fortinet solution set. And the way that we do that is with the FortiOS. So FortiOS is our operating system that runs across all of our Fortinet solutions. And this operating system, since it's common across all our solutions, it binds the solutions very tightly together and allows them to interoperate seamlessly, and gives you that visibility and control from the very top level, the FortiManager, and degree, the FortiGate, over your entire security domain. That includes the switches, the access points, the clients. If you install FortiClient, they're all bound by that one operating system philosophy. And we've been developing that operating system for over 20 years since our inception, when we started off with the FortiGate around 25 years ago. Another very important piece to our security approach is threat intelligence. And that is via our FortiGuard threat intelligence cloud. I'll talk a bit more about FortiGuard and how FortiGuard enhances OT security services in a couple of slides. But those are the two glue, I guess, magic bullets or secret sauce, if you will, that make Fortinet special. Our operating system, which is common across all Fortinet devices, all Fortinet solutions, and our FortiGuard threat intelligence, which is also distributed to all of our solutions and enhances threat detection and visibility in all environments, IT and OT, from cloud down to the lowest levels of Purdue. All right, next. Okay, a little bit more on ruggedized. So here on the right-hand side, we have several different icons that illustrate the different ruggedized platforms that we offer. Starting at the top, we've got the FortiGate Rugged, and then down off to the right, we have what we call a FortiExtender. You'll also see on the left-hand side a FortiExtender Vehicle. Those are two platforms that are essentially providing wireless WAN connectivity via 4G and 5G. So LTE and 5G capable devices for scenarios where you have limited connectivity options, and need non-traditional connectivity back into your wide area network. The FortiExtender Vehicle is also a ruggedized platform. Its intent is to be installed in vehicles, fleet vehicles, service vehicles, or whatnot, but you can also install it in a fixed location. No limitations there. We have dual SIM, dual modem models that provide enhanced availability for critical needs. That can be load balanced across or failover. Diverse service provider SIMs can be inserted. You can even insert your own SIM if you have a private LTE network and operate that way as well. So a lot of options there from a connectivity standpoint. And then extending down into the edge, we have our FortiSwitch Rugged and our FortiAP Rugged offerings. And those are, again, for very harsh, all of these are for very harsh industrial environments where availability is of a critical concern, where you can't install traditional IT equipment due to concerns over failure due to heat, dust, that sort of thing. The Switch Ruggeds and the AP Ruggeds do conform to hazardous area classifications. So we can insert those into those class 1 div 2 environments where needed. These are all running FortiOS. So again, visibility is key, particularly when you're working in a production OT environment. You want to be able to maintain visibility over your entire network and all the assets connected to it. So we embed FortiOS into all of these solutions so that it can be managed as one and can be viewed and operated as one. Um, the FortiGate Rugged, although it is a smaller form factor than our traditional IT FortiGates, we have FortiGates that run the gamut from this form factor all the way up to very large 19-inch rack models and chassis models intended for data center applications. What's common across all of these, of course, is again the FortiOS, and because of that, the feature sets that are in these devices are no different than those feature sets that you find in the higher end FortiGates. The performance ratings are obviously a little bit lower because it is a smaller box, but all the features are there. So you've got protection, you've got security inspection, threat detection, you've got SD-WAN functionality, all built into that FortiGate rugged device as you would on any other type of FortiGate. So we can secure any environment, whether that be on the road or fixed in a fixed location in a harsh industrial realm. Um, Allowing for segmentation and connectivity across many different underlays, whether it be traditional MPLS or LTE or broadband, even since FortiGate is also a self-contained SD-WAN controller. We can do load balancing and application steering using SD-WAN between all of your branch sites and your hubs with the FortiGate Rugged, just as we can with any other enterprise level FortiGate. We do specialize in protecting legacy devices, and that's where our FortiGuard OTSS or OT security service comes into play. Kyle mentioned a feature called virtual patching, which I'll speak to a little bit here in the next slide, and go over the other aspects of the FortiGuard OT security service. All right, so the FortiGuard OT security service. Now, these numbers at the top are constantly being updated because we are always enhancing our threat intelligence. It's an evergreen process that never ends. So we have roughly, and again, this number is probably higher now, 3,200 protocol rules, 1,100 app detection rules, 700 IPS rules, and over 1,200 virtual patch rules. So the OT protocols that we support here on the left, you can see a subset of those, but we support many different OT protocols. So what this basically means is that we can recognize those protocols on the network, and we can use our application control rules to manage the flow of those protocols through the network. As Trent spoke to in some detail, our ability to manipulate the protocol and allow only certain types of function codes through. This is how we do that. So when this licensable feature is applied to the FortiGate, then you can manage and control those OT specific protocols at a very granular level, creating more security for your environment. For virtual patching and IPS detection, we have, again, over 700 IPS rules basically to defend against known exploits that could be targeting your control system environment. And for those devices that cannot be patched due to them being legacy and non-supported, or perhaps you have a manufacturing process that you cannot take down except under certain maintenance conditions, which are intermittent at best, maybe 6 months or 12 months even or longer, then that's where virtual patching will come into play. So you have vulnerable devices on the network. You want to be able to mitigate those vulnerabilities, but you can't stop the process. So what do? Well, you can put a FortiGate in front of that segment, and you can apply virtual patching rules to that FortiGate, which monitor and watch for potential exploits that are targeting vulnerabilities on those devices that the FortiGate is protecting. And that's the idea behind virtual patching. In addition to protection and segmentation, virtual patching, application control, we do recommend that you also approach this from a threat-based risk, from a threat-based risk model. So implementing additional controls in the environment for more mature users, we recommend the network detection and response. We have a product called FortiNDR, which basically sits on the network and passively monitors the traffic for anomalies and threats. We also have a FortiDeceptor product, which is essentially looking for malicious actors that are in the environment, and its job is to sit there and act like a PLC or act like a SCADA server to fool or to lure the attacker into playing around with it. And if that happens, then the FortiDeceptor flags that as an incident and sends an alert to your FortiAnalyzer, which is security operations console, or your FortiSIEM. It can also send that data back to the FortiGate via webhook and instantiate a blocking rule on the FortiGate itself to prevent that adversary from digging further into your network. We can quarantine that IP, fancy things like that. So FortiDeception is a very unique tool in that regard, and anything that touches it is a risk, is a threat, and can be contained very quickly via its integration with other solutions. And then we also have traditional sandboxing as well. So looking for um, suspicious files, identifying suspicious files that are not able to be flagged with traditional means like antivirus. The sandbox can analyze those files and make a determination as to whether or not they are malicious. If they are, then again, send an alert to the FortiGate. Also alert, send data back and telemetry back to our FortiGuard cloud so that an AV rule can be built on the fly via our AI and machine learning algorithms, and then sent back down to your installed base of FortiGates. And then finally, we do have a Fortinet solution, network access control, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, but basically gives you a further enhanced ability to control access to the network for devices that are connecting to it. So you can build profiles inside of Fortinet for allowed devices, and if an unauthorized device is connected to the network, then Fortinet's job is to basically quarantine that device until its disposition can be further obtained. All right, so something a little bit new on the horizon. We've been working towards IEC 62443 certification for some time. And we're very proud to announce that we've achieved Fortinet IEC 62443 4-1 Maturity Level 2 certification, which essentially validates our solutions as having gone through a secure product development lifecycle. So all of our OT solutions are validated against this certification that the IEC standard maintains. And this essentially gives our customers assurance that our firewalls, our switches, and whatnot are developed with a secure by design philosophy in mind. And this goes towards supporting your risk reduction initiatives and also compliance for industrial environments. We are very heavily leaning into the 62443 standard in other ways, as Trent illustrated how well we perform the internal network segmentation function, which is essentially the philosophy behind 62443, particularly parts 3, where basically the standard specifies that networks shall be segmented into zones and conduits, and we can take that even further with microsegmentation within the same broadcast domain, same VLAN. So we have been able to implement the 62443 standard with our solutions since their inception by being able to provide that type of functionality. So we support those initiatives, those pillars, including network segmentation, but also access control and threat detection, which 62443 also specifies as needing for your OT environment. So to sum it up, this certification, again, we're very proud of it. We're happy to offer this to our customers to help them meet their assurance needs and meet their regulatory requirements, and just to give them a base, level of assurance that we do meet a standards body requirement from a secure development lifecycle standpoint. That's really all I have. But if you want to learn more, our website, Fortinet.com, has extensive documentation on it. We also have a training offering, a training.fortinet.com, which is free. You just need to build a profile on the training website, and you can access all of our training on all of our solutions for free. So I encourage you to look at those resources, and if you have any follow-ups, and reach out to CTC, and they can certainly help you there. Thank you very much.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Stephen. Really appreciate you going into so much detail explaining Fortinet's perspective into the OT security landscape, and where you guys can really secure and provide highly available networks across a variety of verticals and industries, right? Not just specifically manufacturing or oil, but right, also police departments with the FortiGate, extender rugged model. There's a lot of really cool products with Fortinet that can fit all sorts of different use cases here. So our key takeaways for today are the IT and OT convergence. And I have to disagree. It's not necessarily that it's happening. It has happened. And now we have to work on fixing our networks, right? To safely secure them and also keep them highly available, and to minimize downtime as much as possible. And we also went over some common mistakes, such as poor cable management, some flat networks, and a lot of not so temporary fixes that create major risks for the operations and availability of our network, right? Also went over how CTC takes a ground up approach to designing, deploying, and ultimately supporting a type of network, right? From a survey design approach first, and then moving on to building the right solution for you, helping you deploy it and configure it, and then also maintain it after the fact. And ultimately, CTC Technologies and Fortinet, we're here to help you and assist you to make you look like rock stars, to make you look like the best engineers and admins in the world to senior leadership, by providing the most highly available and secure network end to end, from your PLCs to your work smartphones to the workstations, all the way up through the cloud. Right, we're here for you, and we're here to provide the most available and secure network. But essentially, how you can engage with us is by going to www.ctctechnologies.com and request a quote from us through there, or you can email sales@ctctechnologies.com, or better yet, give us a phone call at 734-408-0200. All right. And now we're going to open up to a Q&A, open discussion session. If any of you have any questions for me or Stephen, please fire away. You can post them into the chat, come off mute. All right, so it looks like our first question is, how do you deal with vendor access into OT environments securely? So if I'm picking up what you're putting down, you're saying, how do we provide, third-party access into our OT environments? And there's honestly a variety of ways to provide contractor or third-party vendor access into these environments. And we can really scale this up as much as you see fit. We can do something along the lines of like an agentless ZTNA to provide access remotely into that environment. We can do something like an IPsec dial-up tunnel, or my personal favorite is we can deploy FortiPAM, which FortiPAM is used to act as an interface for our third-party contractors or users to access these resources or devices remotely, but it generates a one-time password every time. So we decrease the risk of exposing credentials, and also through FortiPAM we can record these sessions and figure out exactly what they're doing and when they were doing it. So there's a variety of different ways we can provide access, and all just kind of depends on the solution that is best for you, what is the best to maintain and manage, and also what kind of fits within the budget.
Yeah, if I can
All right.
comment on that too a bit, the FortiPAM solution that Trent was talking about is an enhanced remote access solution for critical environments, so OT specifically, but also other critical environments that you might need remote access into, and this can be used for third-party vendors, contractors. It can also be used for your own employees. The benefit of FortiPAM is, from a security standpoint, is that it never allows a direct connection to the asset that you're trying to control or view remotely. It's a proxy service, if you will. So the interaction is between FortiPAM and the asset, not directly with the contractor. So we can, by brokering the conversation that way, we can add enhanced security controls like antivirus inspection and data loss prevention to that stream. Trent also mentioned, the ability to control who gains access to it via secrets that are one-time passwords. Essentially, you can also embed multi-factor authentication capabilities into it. You can do screen recordings. You can also do workflow approval management. So if somebody does need access to a certain resource that requires stricter permissions, then let's say Trent, is first line of approval. He has to approve you to get access to that. And then if it's very critical, then perhaps Trent's manager also needs to provide approval before that access is granted. And then once access is granted, then you have a certain amount of time that access window is available to you. And during that window of time, we can record that entire session with a screen capture video in case there's some sort of incident during or after the interaction. We can capture that and use it for investigations. So it's a very powerful tool that differentiates itself from traditional remote access solutions like VPN or RDP.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Stephen. That definitely uh, provided a much clearer, better explanation of FortiPAM. I really appreciate it because it's truly an incredible product that can provide a lot of value and security to your environment. So thank you. All right. Next to see, besides the OT license, are there any other licenses needed for the FortiGates to operate? The OT license is an add-on to the gate, which essentially pulls those OT IPS signatures down, the virtual patching signatures down, for us to create profiles and policies off of. But right out of the box, from the FortiGates perspective, you don't necessarily need any other license to perform traditional firewall activities or SD-WAN or uh, AP management or switch management. But for the unified threat management, the unified threat protection, if you want to take advantage of your web filters and application control, DNS filters, oh gosh, what else? There's so many different profiles. You will need some type of UTM license, whether that's UTP bundle or an enterprise bundle.
Yeah, that's right, Trent. And then if you want to take advantage of the OT security features that we've discussed, including the application control and IPS signatures that are specific to OT and also virtual patching, then an additional license called OTSS is also required. There was a question in here about detecting suspicious uh, uh, activities inside of OT and what's the first step without shutting everything down? It's a very good question. When you're applying security profiles like IPS or application control, you certainly don't want to do that in a haphazard way. You want to be able to use the monitoring features that are built into those profiles to make sure that you understand the traffic flows and catch any potential false positives that could occur due to the use of those applications before you turn blocking on, because if you do that, you could impact your production, quite easily. So just understanding what's in your environment is critical, and you can implement those controls in a monitor-only mode to allow you to do that until such time as you have a good understanding, a good baseline of traffic patterns that you can then start locking down. So automating isolation is risky in an OT environment, so you certainly need to be careful there as well. The capability obviously is built into the Fortinet solutions to do automatic quarantine, automatic blocking if you desire, but in an OT environment, you do have to be careful about implementing those things without having a very good understanding of what's actually occurring in the environment before you do that.
Fantastic. Yep. Thank you, Stephen.
Sure.
All right. Looks like we got a couple more. What are the applications for ruggedized wireless? So when it comes to ruggedized wireless in the OT space and our OT environments, we've seen this big push to move away from traditional Ethernet or serial communications to provide flexibility for automation, right? For moving parts, robots that might have to move around the plant floor or move up and down lines. It's just not necessarily feasible to connect these devices via serial or Ethernet connection. And it also brings or could potentially bring costs down for those. It could bring costs down, remove that physical medium, and to just operate off of a wireless medium. All right. How does CTC typically support clients after initial deployment? Um, So before we started the managed service program, before we started the MSP, we primarily supported our clients off of blocks of hours. So once we completed a project, we would also sell you a block of, 10, 20, 50 hours that you can pull from for any type of support. But now we've moved into this more of a managed service approach. We have moved away from we've started to move away from doing blocks of hours so we can be more proactive in your environment. So we can be in there finding issues before you report them to us. We're solving them before they're even issues. We're adjusting the architecture and profiles and policies to best suit your environment. And so, uh, as we can still do blocks of hours for post-install engagements, but we highly, highly recommend utilizing our extremely skilled managed service engineering team to be able to provide a more proactive approach post-install. All right. Is there a sort of range of support level CTC can provide for co-managed service solutions? Absolutely. So we break out our managed services into different service categories, right? So let's say you're very proficient in FortiGates, but when it comes to wireless, that's where you need more vendor support and more of that proactive support. We can create our managed service SOW encapsulate only that service category to support you on a wireless front. Also, when it comes to the actual management of your network and your solutions, we prefer a co-managed support because no one knows your network better than you. And we want to work with you to make your network better, and more secure and more available, and right to fix things before they become an issue. So whereas we can take full ownership of your network, that is definitely not our preferred approach. We would rather be in the trenches with you and your team solving issues opposed to owning all of it. All right. How do you justify the cost of OT security when everything is quote unquote working fine today? Um, that really comes down to uh, how much risk you're accepting to take when it comes to downtimes and break fix, and how much that costs the business. If let's say a machine goes down for 2 hours but only costs $1,000, right? And you're doing $1,000 loss in product, maybe your risk isn't so high. You can deal with that. But if you're losing tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars for an hour, 2 hours of downtime, right? I would say that's pretty high risk to have an environment that uh, is working fine, but has the risk to fail, right? Due to poor design, poor implementation. So uh, really, it comes down to the cost of the business for those outages and that downtime.
Yeah, you answered that really well. And viewing security through the lens of operational risk is really, important. Not security's sake, but understanding the impacts to your environment if you do suffer downtime, whether that be from a PLC breaking or somebody, accidentally unplugging something or cutting a wire or some misconfiguration. Security incidents can have, the same impact. Essentially, your production is down, and you're not making product and you're losing money. So even if the business is working fine today, there's a new element of risk that we are, talking about here that impacts those your ability to produce a product. So you want to be able to manage that appropriately. And again, based on your level of risk tolerance is how you need to approach that. Starting with something simple like segmentation is a good place to start, and then taking it from there as you mature.
Fantastic. Thank you, Steve. All right. And I think the last question here is what does good OT security actually look like for a mid-sized manufacturer? That's a very uh, uh, broad question, right? Good depends on the business, right? Are we just making are we just making caps for toothpaste bottles? And we're not there's not a whole lot of processes moving around, and risk is very low if we're down for a couple hours, or is risk super high, and if we're down for a couple hours, we're losing a lot of money. So when it comes to good OT security, it's really dependent upon what we find during our discovery phase, and ultimately, which leads us into the design. Because we might have to go into your environment to segment multiple processes and deploy multiple switches, and also wireless. So we have to do a wireless design, and also deploy, FortiClient for our vulnerability detection and patching on those capable devices. Are we also deploying FortiDeceptor as a honey net to mitigate that risk even further? So we're saying, like, yes, we are designing the network out perfectly, but in the event someone comes in, want to isolate them, trap them within this honey net through FortiDeceptor. Right. It really depends on how important uptime is and your risk tolerance, right? What we talked about previously. So when it comes to good OT security, I would say at very foundation, you at least need the FortiGate with a UTP subscription bundle and with the OT license. From there, you also need Forti switches for your uplinks, uh, and then either FortiSIM for your log and analytics management. It's kind of acts like a syslog server, or FortiAnalyzer, which is more of the Fortinet specific analytic and logging tool. I think at a very bare minimum, it's the FortiGates, FortiSwitches, 40 APs if you have the need for ruggedized wireless in your industrial controls and automation, and then some type of logging. So either it be FortiSIM or FortiAnalyzer.
Yeah, that's good answers to those questions. Another follow-up, I would say, probably a really good place to start. And the first place I would start, particularly for a mid-sized manufacturer, would be to get an assessment, a cyber assessment. And this will do two things. It'll inform the amount of risk that you're exposed to, and it'll also break down the fundamental components that you can add to your environment that will help reduce that risk. So, Trent mentioned a few of those solutions. A good firewall is an awesome place to start. And then from there, you can, do other things like segmentation before you tackle the more complex issues like threat detection and whatnot. But if you haven't done a cyber assessment in your environment, I highly recommend that you do one, just so you know what your risks are, what you're exposed to, and then also to give you some direction and a roadmap as to what to do in order to become more mature from a cybersecurity standpoint.
All right. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, that's a great point. Starting with that cyber risk assessment to understand what your infrastructure currently looks like and the risk and vulnerabilities associated with them, and the acceptable amount of risk and vulnerabilities. So, yeah, that's a great starting point. Thank you, Steve. All right. Right. Oh, I see one more. It seems like the deployment of so many FortiGates could cause a management nightmare. How can we simplify management of all of these devices? That's a great point, right? Because there might be a plant where we're deploying 20 firewalls, right? That's very extreme, but it's a possibility for very large fortune manufacturers to have uh, 20 plus FortiGates to segment different parts of their network and these different processes and systems. Then you multiply that by however many plants you have. Right now, we're getting to the hundreds of firewalls. How do we um, efficiently and securely manage all of those devices? And that is through FortiManager or our FortiEdge Cloud, or FortiGate Cloud, right? There's a couple different offerings there, but when you get to that very large scale, we're managing tens of hundreds, if not thousands of devices. FortiManager, especially in an HA setting, is ideal for managing all of these separate plants and instances, because we can get very uh, very global and very granular at the same time when it comes to our policy packages, our system settings and templates, and also the deployment and management administration of those, right? So we can have one global template that pushes out to all of our devices. It sets our radius, our system settings, general firewall policies. It sets our fabric overlays and SD-WAN, right? And then we can go deeper into that. So we have an OT device group. We can push these specific application profiles and signatures too. So we can get very broad and very granular at the same time with FortiManager, and that's all done through a single pane of glass. For some smaller instances, we might be managing 5 to 10, maybe even 20 firewalls. We could look into something like FortiGate Cloud or Forti Edge Cloud for that type of management. Um, but even then, FortiManager is still widely accepted as the preferred method for managing multiple firewalls across a geographically diverse area.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd add to that also, understanding the operational environment, what's happening in real time. Having a good logging platform goes a long way with regards to that. And one product that we didn't talk about that kind of goes hand in hand with the FortiGate and FortiManager installation is FortiAnalyzer. So FortiAnalyzer is both a log aggregator and a analytics platform that helps you do network and security operations very efficiently and effectively from one place. So you can monitor multiple instances of FortiGate throughout your environment. And we also have custom and third-party parsers that can be implemented inside of the FortiAnalyzer to monitor other devices, not Fortinet solutions, and bring all those logs into one place. And you can do fancy things like build incident response playbooks and whatnot from the FortiAnalyzer interface. And if you want to take it one step further, you can implement things like FortiSIM, which is a more robust traditional security operations platform that you can use to holistically manage your entire environment, not just Fortinet. So those are some recommendations. But starting with FortiManager, particularly if you're deploying a decent size fleet of FortiGates, you'll definitely want to use FortiManager for that, and also for the ongoing management and maintenance of those devices.
All right. Fantastic, Steve. That's a great point. Definitely adding FortiAnalyzer, FortiSIM to your network to consolidate the log management is crucial, right, for troubleshooting and also incident response. So that's a fantastic point. Thank you. All right. I think that wraps up all of our questions. I don't see any more. So we got 1 minute left, so I want to, thank Fortinet so much for participating in today's call. Thank you so much for the continued partnership. It has been amazing working with you all and your team over the last 4 years since I've been here at CTC. Provided amazing support, and I really look forward to future opportunities working with you and with our clients. And thank you specifically, Stephen and Trehan, for participating in this meeting, for helping putting this on. Steve, thank you so much for joining and speaking with us today. And is there anything else you would like to share before we close out the webinar for today?
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much, Trent. Hope we have an opportunity to work together again soon.
All right, thank you. Likewise. All right, so if that is it, thank you all for joining so much. We're hoping to do more of these webinars in the future, so stay tuned to our LinkedIn page and make sure you keep an eye out for them. So thank you all so much, and yeah, have a great rest of your day.